Do you want to connect it? Okay. You can put this in. Or put it in your pocket.
Yeah. There you go. Let's put it on this side. Thank you. Get my phone out the way. Thanks.
You want me to do it? Okay.
No, good. Francois, is it on? Or let me just. Yeah, I think that's working.
One. Oh, it's not going. Maybe it's holding the holding one. Okay, let's see how it goes. If it doesn't work, then these work.
Okay. I'm comfortable with either.
Sorry?
I'm comfortable with either. I don't mind. I can even just talk. I can even just talk
This is
loudly.
sort of university LSC type of stuff.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think we've got a few more people arriving, like my master's class, who I've given them the thing due on Friday. I think they're all stressing out there, but I told them to be here, so some will walk in. Good to see you all, and back again on campus. We sort of do this every quarter. Our first quarter was very much about where we could be going with the property market during 2023, and we're already sort of moving along in both the university. This is our midway through the first semester already. What I'd first like to do is thank very much our sponsors, Cohen Online. Gary Goliath is with her, and okay, Gary, I think you're going to say something. So.
Hi, sorry, I was told that I'm in charge of the 2-minute advertorial that precedes the discussion. So I guess thank you to everybody for being able to attend. I know it's always a rush to get here. You've got a long day to get through. Coin is a sort of a proud sponsor of these seminars. I think the idea for us is to be able to create an environment where we can, discuss kind of topical issues that I think are important to the property industry. And it's also just nice for us to kind of get together every now and then. And really the intention behind these topics is to find things that help you improve the way that you think about or manage your portfolios, own and manage your portfolios. So we're obviously pleased to have you here from the city and talking about infrastructure provision, which is a subject quite close to my heart. But I think what made us really interested in this is that we're very interested in finding ways to help the industry unlock certain types of property value. And I think infrastructure is one of those sort of key enabling factors that tells you where and when you're going to invest and how easy or not that investment is going to be over time. And so we're just very interested in sort of, we're technology provider, so we're just interested in creating efficiencies in different parts of the market. And so this obviously appeals to us. Our efficiencies are more tech-based, so we create sales platforms. So if anybody's interested in sort of selling a portfolio of theirs and wants to engage with the broker market, we have technology that is able to address that. Or in other areas, one of the key issues for creating sort of efficient and productive cities is that you want to be able to transact quite quickly. You want to be able to put assets into the hands of people who want to use it productively. Vacancies, it's exactly the same thing. We want to make sure that vacancies get dealt with as quickly as possible. And I think creating these active and dynamic cities, especially in the city cores, I think is going to be quite important. Or being able to release that into the market is quite important. It makes for much more active and interesting cities, and hopefully also for much improved balance sheets and income statements from the property portfolio side. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. I think refreshments will be afterward. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Just for the students, there are refreshments afterwards. And food. We're all students, I suppose. I suppose some of us never leave. sit around the place. We are also very proud now to have a formal relationship with SAPOA on these seminars. So, Kevin, thank you very much for SAPOA. From the SAPOA perspective, I don't know if you want to say anything, but no.
Thanks, Francois. I wasn't going to, 2 minutes, just saying. Thanks, everybody, and welcome. Just from our side, it's just that we're available to our members, and we want to emphasize that. At the moment, we're sort of looking at all the development contributions from the city, and also the NHBRC levies and the way they move. So together with the Western Cape Property Development Forum, we'll work on that on a national level. SAPOA has just introduced that into our national council, and we see that other people are having the same problems. So just from SAPOA's point of view, we're there to support our members, and we're happy and privileged to be part of this arrangement. Thank you, Francois.
Thank you, Kevin. Just a few words about the Urban Real Estate Research Unit at UCT. It is an official unit of the university located in construction economics and management. And really, the role, we really, it's part of our DNA to find the relationship between the public and private sector. And I think it's so important that we have those discussions and that we research accordingly. We've got a few fairly big research projects on the go. One that my wife doesn't believe anything happens there, but it's the nighttime economy research that I initiate. She just thinks it's an excuse for me to go out. I've got to go out. I've got to walk down Long Street. But anyway, we are doing some interesting work there with the CCID, and more taking a view that cities have to be managed at night as well. Amsterdam has a nighttime mayor. The first one became a druggie and an alcoholic. The second one, I think, just about made it. But cities also, that they need to be managed, and the nights, the work periods, and we have call centers in the CBDs where people shift at 11 o'clock at night on those call centers. So I think there's some interesting work that we're going to carry on do. We carry on with some prop tech work where we want to understand the prop tech environment. We actually did a map of all the prop tech companies. There were 40 now. We're at 80 prop tech companies in South Africa that are somehow disrupting the property market. Some have fallen off. Some haven't quite found it. Some find it difficult to scale up their business. But anyway, so there's a fair amount of work that we're doing there. And then some interesting work around property entrepreneurship. And this is work which I see We've got people from the Development Action Group here as well. With DAG, we're doing some interesting work on property entrepreneurship, how smaller entrepreneurs function in the property market, and how they play their role in, I suppose, the delivery of housing to a significant degree. So I think there's some interesting work to be done around that. And then, surprise, surprise, we are doing some work on sustainability. And our view is very much to understand the ESG, and increasingly we are taking a view that S needs to come before E. Otherwise we'll have green buildings with social problems around us. And maybe G doesn't stand for governance, but for government. And that we need to have government on our side in order to deliver on sustainability and on the S, social housing and others. That's enough from me. Believe it or not, it's coming. At the beginning of the year, as I started the year, a report popped up on my laptop entitled The City of Cape Town Infrastructure Report, December 2022, which I think came out early this year. And I thought it was a pretty good report. I thought it's one of the first reports that I've seen in South Africa that really gives us a view of the way forward. And I urge you to have a look at the report. There's also a very good section on the housing market in there, and the fact that we got about a shortage of 256,000 units, and we're not developing at the rate that we should be developing. So I think all of that comes up, but of course the issue is, where does it take place? Where's the infrastructure? What can we count on? So immediately, as I read through the report, I tried to find out who was involved with this, and you came very, very quickly popped up. We also have a contact now. My former URERU partner is now in the city, Rob McGaffin. So we can figure out who's where and who's doing what. So Yukol, who we've invited to talk, is the director responsible for policy and strategy in the city of Cape Town. You led the drafting of the new 5-year strategy for the city and plays a leadership role on long-term infrastructure strategy, and that's where the interest came in. You was responsible for the economics policy, research strategy, planning, and technical partnerships functions in the city. That should keep you busy. Prior to joining City, you was at the renowned London School of Economics, where he was director responsible for country programs at the International Growth Centre, Global Economic Research and Policy Advisory Initiative of the LSE and Oxford University. At the International Growth Centre, you focused on urban policy, urban economics, and helped to establish the Cities That Work initiative. So I think we certainly have somebody with the background to address us. The floor is yours. So the format is we'll have a presentation and then we'll have a discussion. I think it'll be interesting also to hear how that interrelationship between the infrastructure and the property market works. Let's if we have a few minutes for an open discussion, I think that would be great. You?
Great, thanks.
You've got a microphone.
Yeah, is it working? Is the mic working? Okay.
Can you hear the back?
Okay. All right.
If you can't, then
I'll use the hand mic as a backup if needed. Francois, thank you for the kind introduction. How long would you like me to speak for?
Normally we give people double periods.
Yeah.
That's what I always say. No, but half an hour?
Yeah, I can definitely cover the content in half an hour. Okay.
We try to do the whole thing in about an hour.
Okay, good. All right, thanks very much. Thank you very much for having me. When I received the invitation to speak at this unit, at a function hosted by this unit, I accepted it immediately because I have a lot of respect for Francois and the work of the unit, but also I have a very deep appreciation for our collaboration on partnerships with universities. And so this sort of interaction is one that I value highly. I also am an alumni of UCT, and it's nice to be back on campus, and I take every opportunity that I can to engage with the university. So Francois introduced my role briefly, but I'm the Director of Policy and Strategy at the City of Cape Town, and I sit in a part of the organization. From time to time we change the structure a bit in the city, but I sit in the Directorate of Future Planning and Resilience, and I work very closely with a sister department in that part of the organization called C3PM, which is basically our program, project and portfolio management team. And so a lot of what I'm presenting now and a lot of the content in the report is made possible because of the work that they do as well. So it's a collaboration between people who think about building long-term pipelines and taking a structured approach to program management and project prep. Sorry, you want me to use the mic? Okay. Let me try. If I move that up, is that better? No. Okay. I don't think it's working. Can I turn that off?
Can you cover that?
Can you hear me now? Okay, great. So this also reflects a lot of hard work by the specialists within each of the functions. So just recognizing that it does represent a team effort. And so a little bit of the story as to why we got to producing this report is we recognized, obviously the infrastructure has always been critical to the work that the City of Cape Town does. But we recognized coming out of the pandemic that if we were going to support economic recovery in the city, that one of the most important things we could do is to make sure that our infrastructure budget is spent fully and on the right things at the right time. And also that also underpinned our economic growth strategy in the city, and it underpins the economic logic in our new 5-year term of office strategy. So essentially, we need to, as a city, we need to do the things that no one else will do, and to get those right and create the best platform that we can for the private sector to grow and thrive and create jobs. And when I say the private sector, I mean all the different sectors, but also all forms, from the formal economy right through to large companies. So we put in place an infrastructure framework or an infrastructure strategy that went to council in 21. And one of the things we committed to do in that strategy was to produce an annual infrastructure report. And the idea was to have, it serves an internal purpose in that it gives us a place where we can drive our analysis and have it land in a coherent document and product once a year, where we actually have a deadline to work towards that, and we can drive some of our analysis and have a landing point for that. But also it was important for this reason, is that there are many external stakeholders who have a keen interest in what the city's plans are for infrastructure. And our mayor, I'm sure those of you who follow what the mayor is saying, is very committed to being completely open with Cape Townians about our challenges, but also what we're doing about them. So that's the background to the report and why we did it. So I'm going to talk to you. There's no way that within 30 minutes I can talk to you about every detail within the report, and I do encourage you to have a look at it. So please consider this a tour of the report, and I'm going to focus on one sector to make it practical, and also to allow me to explain one sector in a little bit more detail. But just the aim of the report is the first consolidated attempt that we've done to evaluate infrastructure delivery plans for the next 10 years, and it's possible to do now because we have spent the previous few years investing in a database and a SAP-based system to capture every single capital project in the city in one place, and also because we spent time developing a consistent set of 10-year sector plans across all the key sectors in the city, making sure that everyone's using the same assumptions for planning and using a similar format, which allows us then to put together a comprehensive 10-year view. So the three questions that we sought to answer are pretty simple. Is the city's bulk infrastructure master planning in the 5 sectors adequate? Does the city's bulk infrastructure pipeline in the 5 sectors meet current and future demands? And if the answer is no, are there projects in the pipeline to address those shortfalls? That's what we set out to establish in doing the work. And we have limited this analysis for the first report to 5 utility sectors, and I'm using utilities broadly because it's housing and transport as well. And the important important for this audience is just to be aware that we have drawn the data from our system in May last year. So it is coming up to almost a year old, and we will be doing an update during the course of this year. But that's just to understand that it's taken at a point in time, and it's analysed alongside a review of the sector plan information. So it's not just the data that are captured in our project and portfolio management system. It's also the analysis and that makes up the sector specific reports. So that's where we drew the information, and you'll see there in the table the description of the infrastructure types that are considered for each sector. And I won't repeat that, but I hope that is clear. So just to say, this all, as I said in the beginning, links to our 5-year strategy, which is to create a city of hope for residents, for better lives for themselves and for their families, but also that we can give a signal that decline is not inevitable in our cities in South Africa, and that we can show that things can be done differently. That's the vision, that's the aspiration, but recognizing that the heart of that is overcoming poverty, giving more Cape Townians an opportunity to lift themselves out of poverty, and the necessary precondition is economic growth. And we can't have economic growth unless we have a safer environment and we have quality basic services. And so that's kind of some of the underpinning logic. Some of the long-term assumptions that we have taken into account for all of the sector plans is that, obviously, some people say demography is destiny. So demographics are obviously critically important for infrastructure planning. And we need to make sure we get the right infrastructure in the right locations at the right time. And our current population projections are showing that we'll have 1.75 million more people than the current population by 2040. So that is based on projections which build out from the last census and take the annual population estimates from Stats SA into account. But we are very much looking forward to the census data that will become available, hopefully a partial release this year and then fully next year, because that will give us a fix on how far off our projections are from reality. And then we'll have to update all the master planning to accommodate that. The report structure is that we have some cross-cutting sections in the beginning, which talks about how the city funds infrastructure, the mayoral priority programs, and then there are the 5 in-depth sections, 1 per sector. And then within each section, we look at the current state of infrastructure. We try to give an honest assessment of current state. We include capacity maps, which I'm sure this audience is very familiar with, but I will show some examples. And then an analysis of the future outlook. So and obviously that's different for each sector because, for example, and I will go into water and sanitation in a moment, rainfall, what we think is going to happen with rainfall is unique, for the water sector and is something that we had to make some assumptions about. And then key takeaways and recommendations per sector. So I'm going to go into water and sanitation as the example deep dive sector because it makes up such a big share of our total infrastructure spend into the future, and because I think for an audience that cares about property development, you'll no doubt have been aware of the very significant challenges that, for example, bulk wastewater treatment capacity is having in the city. So that's why we're choosing to focus on that. And the infrastructure types that I'm going to talk through that we considered here are bulk reticulation and bulk and reticulation reservoirs. So reservoirs, water treatment plants, wastewater treatment works. I'm not going to talk about wastewater sludge treatment just for the interest of time. Bulk sewer and pump stations, and then catchments, stormwater and river management. Those last two are well, actually, all of these combine also to have a big impact on freshwater water quality in terms of estuaries and flays, and that has been a big topic in Cape Town, and it's something that the mayor is driving very hard for improvements in that through the mayor's priority program. So what is our current state on each of these infrastructure types? So bulk storage capacity is sufficient to meet the city's water demands broadly. We have 19 reticulation reservoirs that experience capacity constraints, and that is, we define that as less than 48 hours of storage capacity. We have 4 bulk water reservoirs that have see a significant reduction in water levels during peak usage, and they are listed there. And then we have 1 reservoir that's a particular concern because it has a single distribution pipeline. It supplies this has a big impact on the South Peninsula, and in the event that that pipeline had a prolonged repair, there's not sufficient bulk capacity in that reservoir to sustain water supply. So those are all being identified for future projects to give us more of a buffer there. Water treatment plants. So this is, treating water to potable drinking water standard. We have 12 water treatment plants, and the total design capacity is 1,655 megalitres a day. But you'll see that on the slide here that actually our usable peak capacity is less than that. That is being factored into future plans to bring that back up to full capacity. We have 5 water treatment plants that have no surplus capacity during peak demand. In a context of a growing population, that's obviously not something that something that needs to be addressed. We have 2 plants that can't shut down for extended periods of time, and that obviously impacts on maintenance, which is something that we need to address. And then there's, I don't know how many people will be aware of this, but there are 2 key water treatment plants that are fed directly from Theowatuskloof Dam, and that comes through a tunnel that if that were to be compromised in any way or temporarily down, it would have a very, very significant effect on our water treatment capacity in the city. And so you'll see later on, I'll talk about a package of projects that make up something called the Bulk Water Augmentation Scheme, which is to address this risk. So wastewater treatment works, the city owns and operates 23 of these, plus 3 marine outfalls. The compliance with national license conditions at these facilities has declined from 90% to 80% in the last 10 years due to aging infrastructure and capacity constraints. That licensing condition information gives us a sense of quality of the water that is coming out of those facilities. We are having specific capacity constraints in Potsdam, Zandvliet, Klippheuvel, Makassar wastewater treatment works, and the issues there are either flow or load capacity constraints. And you can imagine that these plants have been through a very, the flow has been challenging, particularly during the drought. And then the load is a challenge because of rapid, particularly informal development, where there's a whole mix of items going into the wastewater treatment works that they're not designed to deal with. And then Borchard's Quarry Wastewater Treatment Works is the only facility that can accept tankered fecal sludge and chemical toilet waste. And given that in some informal settlements is the only means of providing sanitation, that's something that we need to factor in and plan for. So the wastewater sludge treatment, actually let me not go into that, but just to say that that is another area that we have to deal with. But in the interest of time, let me move to bulk sewer and pump stations. So this is a big focus within the Mayor's Priority Program on sanitation and inland water quality. And the goal is to reduce the frequency, duration, and impact of sewer spills and improve response times when there are spillages. There's been a thorough conditional assessment of pump stations that's been done. And the analysis, I don't think, will be news to anyone that's familiar with sanitation issues, but foreign objects is the single biggest cause of frequently blocked sewers. We have 25 city pump stations that have insufficient capacity, and we have a substantial upgrading of the rising main and gravity system that's needed at one pump station, and that'll take 3 to 4 years to complete. The pump stations have also really been very severely impacted by load shedding. These systems are not designed to be turned off on and off multiple times in a day. So obviously they are impacted, and when they can't pump, there's a backing up of sewage in the system, which can lead to then the emergency overflow systems having to kick in, which then obviously very often flows into some kind of water channel that then impacts inland water bodies. So, load shedding really does not make this situation any easier. Catchment, stormwater and river management. We have 21 catchments in the city that require stormwater master planning. It's not something that I had spent a lot of time thinking about, but probably many of the people in this room are very aware of it, is that Cape Town actually has a lot of catchments that need to be properly managed, and they affect parts of the city that are some of the most rapidly densifying. We have 10 high-level master plans that cover 50% of that, but they're very high level, and we still have a significant gap on the remaining catchments. And that lack of stormwater master planning impacts the city's ability to manage stormwater for flood protection, pollution control, and water harvesting. So this is, it also, if we were to leave this, and sort of do our stormwater master planning at a rate that we are now, we would have our master plans ready in several years' time, and then that still needs to convert into a capital pipeline. So obviously that's of concern. So I talked about the capacity maps that are in the report. So obviously for people wanting to think about property development, how the city is going to develop, you would be very interested in where are the capacity constraints. And so that requires us to show you what the catchments are for each facility. So this is a capacity map for wastewater. And I'm just going to zoom in. So the green is surplus capacity, orange is nearly at capacity, and red is over. So this is the northern part of Cape Town, and you'll see that it's probably quite far, particularly particularly for those at the back. But the red is, for example, the Potsdam catchment, and we know that the Potsdam wastewater treatment works is at capacity. So what this shows you is it gives the reason I'm showing you this is it gives you a sense of the level of detail in the report. So the red diamonds are prioritized pump stations, the circles are completed projects, triangles are major upgrades, the stars are new installations, and the crosses are efficiency improvements. So it gives you the locations of specific types of projects that we're doing as well. So let's look to the future now, and what's the future outlook that we've captured in the sector plans, and then it's come through into the report on water. The Water Directorate expects that water demand will remain subdued up until 2024. So when after the drought, we did a water strategy. It was incredibly hard to know for sure what would happen with water demand. Because there'd been such a radical, we had the phenomenal achievement that we reduced water demand by 50% in Cape Town in response to the drought. But nobody knew how much it would bounce back and how long it would take to bounce back. So we had to make some assumptions based on the data points that were available to us at the time. And at the time, the assumption was that it would bounce back by 80% within 3 years, over a 3-year period. And that's been reasonably accurate. Obviously now the mayor and the city have started communicating again about water consumption because of the dam levels. The other uncertainty was what was going to happen with rainfall. Was the drought a once-off? Was it a trend? Is there going to be a step change like we saw in Perth in Australia, or is it going to be a gradual change of a gradual drying? We know that all the climate projections for Cape Town suggest a gradual drying trend with much more variability. That's just, we've had to factor all of that into our planning, and we have to accept that there will be some, there's also pressure on the catchments in terms not only from rainfall but also from invasive species that creates pressure on the catchment. That all leads to us having to secure 300 million litres of water per day using non-rainfall sources. So that makes up a big part of our future our future infrastructure plan. And then I think what was true after the droughts in our water strategy is that we focused on water supply, on water availability, on drinking water. We didn't pay as much attention to sanitation. That has now, come up to level in terms of priority, and there is a significant focus now in the city on sanitation infrastructure. So the portfolio as of May 2022 showed planned capital spending increases up to 2026 and then drops annually after. The majority of the capital projects, 93% relate to new and upgrade projects linked to the new water plan, and BWAS, which is that augmentation scheme to deal with the risk of the pipeline from Theewaterskloof. And then significant capacity upgrades to the wastewater treatment works of Zandvliet, Potsdam, etc. So planned investment in refurbishment and replacements are fairly consistent over the 10-year period, and then regular pipe replacement is the bulk refurbishment and replacement item within the portfolio. So while the timing of that, to some extent, the big investments, the big heavy lifting done in our very expensive wastewater treatment works are very expensive to upgrade. So the big heavy lifting speaks to some of the peak in that pipeline, but obviously what we would like to do is have a consistent investment over time, and it needs to increase as population growth increases. So this is true of this sector, but we're also in all the other sectors seeking to have a much better developed pipeline in the 5 to 10 year horizon. That's the goal. Okay, so future outlook, some other points are 28% of the new and upgrade projects over the next 10 years relate to the bulk water augmentation scheme to improve security of bulk water supply. The bulk water reservoirs, we have rapid development in areas around Zevenwacht, and that necessitates an additional reservoir. And then we have new and upgrade projects for Contomanskloof and Steenbras reservoirs. For pump stations, we have the rapid pump station condition assessment, and that's led to 20 pump stations being prioritized for upgrading. And then we have significant wastewater treatment works underway. So I'm not going to talk through all of these, but I wanted to, and the text is very small, I apologize, but I wanted to give you a sense of the level of detail in the report. So these are the annexures, some of the tables from the annexures in the water and sanitation section. So I'll just give you, for those of you who can't read the titles, but the top right there is the status of stormwater master plans across Cape Town. The bottom right is capital commitments in the new water plan over a 10-year period from 2019 to 2029. And then the bottom left is city-owned pump stations with insufficient capacity, and we've listed all of those. Then on this one, so this shows you the projects that are responding to identified constraints, and on what I want to point out is the right-hand column, which gives you the project preparation status. So this gives us now a list of key projects that we corporately can track within the city and give visibility to our leadership to say these are the projects we identified as being critical, and now we can track the project preparation status and make sure that those things are moving through stages properly. And if, for example, we get objections lodged by competing tenderers in the procurement process that leads to substantial delays in the procurement for something, we can flag that as a corporate risk and begin to deal with it. So key takeaways and recommendations: 38% of the integrated portfolio relates to water and sanitation projects. 17.5% of these relate to the new water plan. That is obviously it's a very significant investment, and it boils down to a risk tolerance of how much risk do we want to take in terms of expenditure now versus resilience to climate change and future droughts. And that is a judgment call that our leadership will have to make in putting together all the financial needs of the city. The new water plan, that's over the next 10 years. I've spoken about that. And the that we have a critical biosolids beneficiation facility. That's a critical need. I didn't go into it, but that's a critical need for the city, and that'll be completed in earliest completion is 2028. So we have to deal with that in other ways, which has obviously operational expenditure implications. And then I've already spoken about the importance of stormwater master planning. So in my remaining 5 minutes, I'm just going to speak to the overall findings of the report and then show you a couple of extra slides that I think I've added just before this session because I thought they'd be of interest. So we have capacity constraints across all 5 sectors. Energy, urban waste management, and water and sanitation all have existing plans to address the investment backlogs and to improve infrastructure capacity. We do, however, have concerns on human settlements and on urban mobility. So we know that human settlements, the project pipeline is nowhere near adequate for what we think demand could be into the future and to address backlog. Now, obviously, the human settlements pipeline is complex because we're only one player in a system that provides housing opportunities within the city, but that is one that we're actively working to strengthen at the moment. And then we have our big investment in urban mobility and road-based public transport is the phase 2A of what we call phase 2A, but it's basically the extension of the My City from Claremont out to Khayelitsha. And that is our big focus. So the city took a decision to go really focus a lot of effort and resources on that corridor and get it right. But after that investment, then our investment tapers off. And so, the question we're asking now is how can we bring more road-based public transport projects forward to strengthen that pipeline in the outer years of the portfolio. And then the stormwater master plans, we are in the process of securing substantial funding from a partner to accelerate the stormwater master planning, because we know that if we can get those master plans in place, then we can get projects loaded in the system and begin to prepare those. And that has resilience benefits in terms of flooding, and we know that flooding is a significant issue, particularly in some of the poorest parts of the city. But it also has the potential to unlock land for development if done right. So this is perhaps an obvious point, but one that has to be made, is that we're not the only player who is needing to step up and respond to infrastructure needs of a city that is going to grow by 1.75 million, by 2040, and by potentially much more than that beyond that. And so we just, in the report, identify specific projects and then sort of general systems that are needed, that have to be addressed by our intergovernmental partners. So just a few here, or the sort of 4 main ones actually. So Erica's main transmission substation. That's scheduled for commercial operation in 2028. And Philippi substation extension project, that's for operation in 2026. If those projects are delayed, that has a very serious impact on the stability of electricity supply in the city for city supplied customers and for Eskom supplied customers. The access to the rail for waste haulage is a significant challenge. So because of occupation of the rail line, of one of the key rail lines, a lot of waste haulage is having to happen by road, which obviously has traffic implications, but also has operational cost implications. And then passenger rail, remains a critical issue in our city. We are carrying less passengers now on rail for commuting in Cape Town than we were 10 years ago. So we have a rail network that has the potential to be, because of so few level crossings, has the potential to function as like a high density transport, almost like an overground metro system, but it's performing suboptimally, and that obviously has a very significant impact when you think about the growing population. So this is not in the report, but I wanted to give you a sense of the capital portfolio. You might have heard the mayor when he launched this report spoke about 120 billion capital portfolio. So this is everything that's in our system. it's not all going to be executed. That's a budgeting decision that has to be made in terms of what does council approve in terms of the budget. But this just gives you a sense of the amount that we're starting to load into our capital planning system based on our assessment of need. And the by far and away the light blue in that pie chart there is water and sanitation, and the other big spenders are urban mobility, energy, human settlements. We also have a significant actually corporate services spend, which is to do with our digitization and setting the city up for the next phase of our IT infrastructure. And then this is just to show you when we say that we're taking project preparation in the city seriously. The city took global best practice in terms of stage gates and project preparation, and we took examples from a number of places, but one of the ones that we used to build our system was the UK government's Green Book 5 case model, and we built it out a little bit. We added 2 more cases, and we've built a very robust project preparation process. And there's a stage gate committee for large scale projects that's handled at a corporate level, and then for smaller value projects it's handled at a directorate level, and they all go through a very robust project preparation process. And in the beginning it was about getting kind of almost in-flight projects up, big ones through, and making sure that they were being robustly prepared. But now we're getting going further and further into the project portfolio and trying to identify critical projects that need to be brought forward with improved preparation. So that is just a word on project preparation, which is obviously a big part. Getting that contract management and procurement right is all part of actually seeing the concrete getting poured and projects actually happening. So in line with the topic for tonight, I'm just going to close with this slide. Infrastructure is, it's redundant, I think, to say that it's a critical enabler of the property sector. But I know that land production is, ultimately to be able to get a construction project to start in the property sector, you need that land production system to work. And that for that to happen, you need to have your land pipeline, you need to have your infrastructure in place, and you need your development approvals and zoning, etc. And so that is what we see. Obviously the most urgent priority is to avoid development moratoriums and constraints through rectifying infrastructure challenges that are live now, and focusing, really driving project preparation, procurement, contract management. And then in the short term, to align the district spatial development frameworks and the infrastructure plans. So basically, if we've said that we want a particular area to have a certain spatial layout or density, we need to be able to make sure that we are planning now for the necessary infrastructure to unlock that spatial plan. And that is something that we'll be focusing on and showcasing in future reports. And then obviously in the medium to long term, which I hope has come through here, is planning for population growth well in advance, and for changing environments. So that could be, for water, it could be climate change. For energy, it could be radical changes in the business model for a municipal energy utility. So Francois, let me stop there, and you can point out all the areas where I have missed the importance to the property sector. Should I sit?
You know what? We've got 2 microphones, so I think, Gary, if you take one, see if there's one question up there. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we'll share this. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think on the one hand it shows the level of detail that there is. I mean, you took the sanitation sector, but for each of those you have the same level of analysis, the whole way from mobility to human settlements and so forth. And I would agree with you that the future of the sector and its ability to increase the rates base of Cape Town relies on the property sector being able to deliver. I would agree with you, and I think if we're going to change the spatial layout of Cape Town, move away from the cities that we've known in the past, it's going to be so important to be able to undertake developments in areas which were underserved in the past, to get us into Maitland, to get us into other areas where there are lack of infrastructure, and I think that's going to be the challenge. Is the ability of the sector to move into newer areas where the parks are not necessarily there, where the urban infrastructure is not there. So I think that's where our challenge is. But it certainly shows, the work that is being done. And I think it's so important. I mean, I just had a discussion with a number of developers, and it's about the role of the public sector to play its role in the mitigation of risk. And I suppose in many cities, the infrastructural risk is a very real one that the developers and the property sector needs to deal with. Jonathan.
Hello. A superb presentation. Thank you very, very much. It's indeed a great pleasure to live in a city that is so well prepared and planned. And I wish you well. I didn't see anywhere in your presentation a provision for water from air. And if that has been considered, is there going to be a similar styled incentive plan offered to developers to incorporate water from air facilities in their respective properties?
So I suppose it's an issue of, the new technologies that we are adopting and the openness to go and look at new technologies.
Do you want me to answer them one by one?
Okay, let's see. Has anybody else got a question? Okay, let's take them. Oh, well, what do they say? Human mind can only deal with 6 things at the same time or something. In my case, it's 2 things, but... Okay.
Thank you, Francois. I agree with the previous question. The insight you've shared is quite beautiful. It's spectacular. I also now have a foresight question, because across all 5 sectors, whether it be water, energy, mobility, human settlements, I can't remember the last one, where's the thinking around the exponential technologies that can speed up the delivery of the infrastructure? And the second question I have is, I like the tour, having gone through the report, which was quite bulky. Do you have a presentation summary tour for each 5? Because that would make it very easier for some of us who are looking to make investments.
Okay, so the investment document. Okay, let's take the 2. The one on the technology.
Yeah. So thank you for mentioning this need for a summary and with that being helpful. We don't have one publicly available, but what I'll do is I will talk to my team because we did a complete version of this and then just basically grade most of it out, because most audiences can't you can't go spend 2.5 hours going through it all. So I will talk to my team about putting a PDF version of it on our website, and I'll send the link to Francois when we do that. Thank you for the suggestion. So, water from air. So let me answer it specifically, and then I'll talk, broaden it out to, the experimental technology, both in buildings, but then, for accelerated delivery. So I am not aware of any plans to use water from air. So the main water augmentation technologies we're looking at, and it's not really technologies, they've been there for a long time, but is groundwater, so aquifers. So there's Cape Flats and Table Mountain Group aquifers that are in development. Desalination is the other significant one, which would be a very significant investment. But one of the biggest inputs to it is actually energy. But given our plans to, increase our renewable energy programs in the city that helps to mitigate that cost. So that's the second, and there's a third that I'm not remembering right now. So it's more that the water from air is not on the list as far as I know. So your point is about incentives and whether there be ways of incentivizing developers to use new technology. So I think that it's a good question. I don't have a neat answer for you. What I would say is that I think there has been a significant activity in the market to increase water resilience anyway. So a lot more buildings are a lot more water efficient now. I mean, and this audience will probably be able to tell me more about that. And significant investment by some companies in even treating borehole water, etc. So like Old Mutual, and we had to deal with a whole new phenomenon in the drought, which is having independent companies operating as water producers within the system, which increases is complex because you have to it's one thing if they just use water on their premises. It's another thing entirely if they begin to feed water into the network, because then you have to put in place quality controls and protect the integrity of the water quality in the network. So I don't have a neat answer for you on the incentives around water from air. I'd have to think about that and get back to you. But in terms of technology, I would say this. It's the city and our mayor particularly is very open and really keen for the city to use innovative technology as much as possible. It is incredibly hard to do in the city environment. Our supply chain, the way we operate within, piloting technology even. So if we have, for example, the Gates Foundation want to pilot a new type of toilet technology with us. But then to be able to find a way to do that sort of procurement through our very regulated procurement environment is incredibly hard. I don't think people realize the Municipal Financial Management Act is so much more strict on procurement than the Public Financial Management Act. And to make sure you get clean audits, you really have to play it very much by the book and innovate within that environment. So we face regular challenges on piloting technology, because often someone who develops a technology will take it to the scale that they can within their environment, but then the next obvious stage is to test it in the real world municipal environment. And we would love to be able to partner with that. And so all I can say is that right now it's a live conversation at the moment, is how do we find a way of doing that, or partner with others to test technology if our systems are too restrictive. And then on your broader point about how do we unleash the private sector to use technology to solve some of these crisis issues, the place where I think we're doing it best at the moment is on renewable energy, because we've created a feed-in tariff, and we're trying to remove as many of the blockages that we can to people going to scale. And we're so pleased that national government has also removed the impediments to going to scale on renewable energy.
Thank you. There was a few more questions. Okay, there's one at the back, and yes.
Okay, I'll go first. So I concur with the other guys about the presentation. Very detailed. Thank you so much. In fact, I think I want to get my hands on the report as well, because there's a need for me to look at it in the short term.
By the way, just go to the web, to the city. That's where I found it.
Oh, perfect.
City of Cape Town documents, and
cool. Somewhere
it comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm from the generation where data doesn't come, I go and look for it. But anyway.
So, yeah, my question is around sustainability, really. So you mentioned that 50% of your master plans you still need to go look for funding for, right? And yeah, for generating master plans. And then you also mentioned, you showed us some beautiful heat maps there showing some constrained areas in the city where you still need to, I think over the next 10 years, you need to do some refurbishments, some new installations and so on. Now, if you're gonna go looking for money today, you have to think about ESG, or rather, basically your ESG, right? And there's also the SDGs that basically are I believe the City of Cape Town is looking into. So what I didn't get from your presentation is, what are you guys planning to try and speak to some of those ESGs and SDGs? If you look at number 12, for example, on the SDGs, it speaks about responsible consumption and production. So if you can just give me a sense of what you guys are looking at.
I think that's quite interesting. It's the frameworks and the use, and what is it? 11 is on cities, and we got 12. And how do we use the human habitat SDGs as a framework to report on? I think the city has already moved. Yeah, I think I've already seen evidence of.
So just to be clear, the 50% of master plans, that is specifically for stormwater. We have good master plans. We have master plans across all of our sectors. All the sector plans are effectively a master plan. We've introduced 9 sector plans in the city. Some of them are not as good. What my point is, there are gaps, and some of them are not as strong, particularly in the outer years. So the stormwater is an example of a gap within water and sanitation. So I just don't want anyone to get the impression that we've only got 50% of master plans in general. That's the last message I'd want you to take away. But your point about securing funding. So fortunately, fingers crossed, I'm hoping for a very favourable outcome very soon on funding to support the stormwater master plans. And if that doesn't come through, we'll fund it through the adjustment budget, or maybe even through the final budget, because the draft budget for the next financial year got tabled today by the mayor. So if we don't get external funding, we'll just fund it ourselves, because it can't wait. So we'll just have to find a way of funding it. But your broader point around the SDGs and showing sustainability is a very good one. So we take that very seriously. If you look at our 5-year strategic plan for the city, what we call our in government speak our IDP, we have tagged every single program in the IDP according to which SDG it relates to. And we have also tagged throughout that document the ones that we believe credibly, not just kind of window dressing, but credibly respond to climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation. So we've tried to sort of check ourselves against those objectives and to see whether we're standing up to them. What I can't show you now because it's in progress, but we'll show you in the next, hopefully it'll be in the next report, is a climate change screening of our entire capital portfolio. So we want to be able to, we've identified what our key climate adaptation risks are, and then we are checking all our key portfolios to see whether there are gaps in that. So that really helps us when we're engaging with the international donor community and funders, because we can say, if you're interested in climate change, which is what most of the international funding game is about now, it's sustainability bonds, energy transition, etc. We're able to show how our portfolio responds to that. We do quite well on energy transition because we're all desperately trying to transition our energy for carbon mitigation, but right now that's not the main. Energy security is the main driver. But I hope that answers your question. But we're taking it seriously because we are also very deliberately trying to seek more international partnerships, and international partners are asking exactly those questions. Besides from the good of being sustainable.
I think we'll take one more question. And, okay, there are 2 here. I think you had, so we're going to go 1 and then 2. Are there any more questions? And 3. Okay, we'll take 3, final round, and then I think our wine is waiting for us and other beverages. Okay, 1.
Thanks for the presentation, quite insightful. It's a bit difficult. I had 2 questions, so I'm deciding which one should I leave out. But nonetheless, the first one relates to considering the fact that infrastructure is normally a long lead time project, and then the life cycles tend to take, let's say, 10 years. So my question is, how do you guys deal with the amount of time that you need to take to develop the infrastructure versus the change in whoever's occupying the highest political office? So how do you ensure that there's continuity for the projects that have developed or being planned across different political regimes? And then the second one is, how how do you guys think about the provision of particularly reticulation infrastructure in informal settlements that have already been developed? So what's your thinking around providing infrastructure in those spaces? Thanks.
Okay, so let's take all the questions. I think let's move them. Let me give you the mic. Then Gary, you stay up there.
Thank you so much, Hugh, for the presentation. I work for the city now, but I came from provincial government before, where I worked on the property efficiency report. So I understand I can appreciate the directions all the information comes from and what it takes to put it together. So really, really well done. I couldn't help but note that in the report that obviously finance and grant funding are two things that hold the city hostage in terms of infrastructure delivery and investment. And I was just wondering whether the city had sort of considered any other income generating vehicles or methods to help fund its infrastructure projects. I think we've all noted that the province has merged its human settlements and public works department into an infrastructure department, with the idea of creating an entity to fund the shortfall in terms of the budget that is lacking. I don't know if the city's considered that. I know obviously there's the CTRCC and the stadium, whether those are profitable or not, or whether money's coming back into the city, I'm not sure. But just a question around how can we address that shortfall, because obviously that's what's holding us back.
So through the structures and Gary, land value capture, when you were at the World Bank, something you were working on that can also play a role in this. And I suppose that's the relationship with the property sector. How can we ring fence around the infrastructure and maybe do some exciting work there? Gary, I think there was one. Was there? Oh, sorry.
Hi, my name is Daphne Klopper. I work within the property industry with a focus on affordable housing and transformation in the industry. So if I look at your budget and you're looking at 8% spending on human settlements, naturally I don't know what the budget within the budget is, but if we're looking at another 20,000 units per year, which looks to be the standard if we look historically, Western Cape Department of Housing has reported that we're short 500,000 houses. Demand increases by 10%. We're only supplying 2 to 3. What is the city's expectation with regards to the strategy as far as filling the gap, working with, well, as you mentioned, public and private?
Especially if we're going to move to land and service sites, how does the game change? Because I think I also saw in the report that the one budget is on its way down because there are other ways of delivery. I think the grant is coming a bit to an end there. But anyway, we'll discuss those. Okay, those are the three questions, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, I'll try and do the questions justice, but also be brief. Look, these are excellent points. And all of them are, hard answers. So on political terms of office, look, it is a risk. So I'm a civil servant, and it's if I talk to any of my colleagues in other cities, it is something that they have to factor in. And I'm in a very fortunate position in that the political environment in Cape Town is stable. So we're able to, plan long term, and there's less time spent on firefighting. I think the answer to your question of how do you keep your eye on the ball and keep these things moving through during as political officers come and go. So I think part of the answer to that is having the robust long-term plans, and I don't think any incoming political leader, whatever their persuasion, would want the sanitation system to fail or water to fail or congestion to worsen, because that's not going to be good for the relationship with voters. So I think what matters is having credible plans in place and having the pipeline there. Where I think where a change of political leadership might impact on this is, for example, focus or momentum or drive. So if, we're at the moment, we benefit a lot from the drive that the mayor brings, for example, on sanitation and on some of the other key priorities that he has, and you can leverage that to get good movement in terms of delivery. If that went away, we would have to lean on other authorities within the city to bring that same drive, like that of the city manager. So you just have to adapt to that. But I think the key is having stable, locked-in, long-term plans, and a long-term financial outlook that you can clearly communicate to a incoming political leader. These are the benefits of this investment plan. I think the types of projects that are more prone to political change are those that are very visible, like, I don't know, a major new highway link or a major, new property development in a key part of the city that's very visible. But the sort of stuff I'm talking about here, but maybe aside from transport, is, I think, not, you would be saying to a political principal, do you want your basic services to keep up with the population? And I think almost any political principal would say yes. So, and then on informal settlement sanitation, so that is a very difficult problem. And it's until we can do for certain areas, it is difficult because they're under power lines or they're in areas that are going to consistently be flooded, etc. And for other areas where it is technically possible, there's the complexity of doing informal settlement upgrades, which are slow. But that is what we need to have a much more ambitious plan on. So part of the ramping up of our ambition in our human settlements pipeline is including a much more ambitious plan on informal settlement upgrades, because you can't put waterborne sewage in and improve the conditions until you actually have a reblocking of the informal settlements. So that is the plan, and in the interim, then the idea is to have the best possible services using the available technology. We do have a stream within our infrastructure strategy, which is on alternative service delivery, which is to look at how network infrastructure is changing into the future. So to take a long view and say, actually, maybe some of our traditional ways of delivering infrastructure won't make sense in 20 years' time, and maybe aren't suitable for some of the challenges we're facing in human settlements environments, and how do we respond to that? And so that is something that we're working on. So that you might have seen a piece of work the city put out, or a decision communication from the city last year on packaged wastewater treatment plants. So this was in response to bulk capacity constraints in the western, sort of northwest part of the city, that red part that I showed you on the capacity map. And we did work with Green Cape, one of our partners, on figuring out under what conditions are wastewater treatment package plants, so on-site package plants, are they safe and they can be used effectively. And then we use that technical assessment to update our guidance so that we're basically making the use of package plants easier. So it's an example of how we're trying to innovate on alternative service delivery, which I think, and there is also work happening on informal settlements as well, on sanitation specifically. On grant funding, so grant funding is a big issue, but what this report helped to stimulate in a conversation in the city was a conversation about, do you plan for what you think you might get from national government, or do you plan for what the city needs, and then put the funding problem in the chief financial officer's court? And the message from the city manager and the mayor is very clear. You plan for what the city needs, and then you put that tough challenge on the CFO's desk. And it's going to lead to very hard choices, but it's the right thing to do, because then there can be honest assessment of priorities, and how much as residents we're willing to tolerate in terms of rates to pay for things.